You had to talk about Kyle Busch's situation, and then he kind of took offense to it.
As he should.
But I think that's the hard part about everything that you do. Do you worry about that situation? Because I know we all don't want enemies on the racetrack to take us out of the scenario.
He said he could make your life hell. I saw a quote.
I mean, of course. Yeah. I mean, there's no matter where you run, you find there's ways, but it's just such a hard tightrope. I knew when the subject came up, I'm like, how am I going to tread this? Because I have to be honest to the people that tune in and listen.
100%.
That's why they listen. But I also have to go on the racetrack with them. And I felt like I was being gentle and trying to share the blame all around, because I think that there's enough to go around, right? I know what he's capable of, and I know that he's not loving where he's at because he's a tough competitor. I'm rooting for him because the sport needs the old Kyle Busch.
We need Kyle Busch. Yeah. You had to talk about Kyle Busch.
Welcome back to Coop Radio presents NASCAR stuff. We have got a loaded show today. Holy crap. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed last week's show. If you did, check your last week's show out. I would appreciate that you did if you didn't. But if you did check out last week's show and you appreciated it and you liked it, thank you very much. Leave a comment if you did, though. I saw all y'all that went and watched it and didn't leave a comment. What the hell? Leave a comment on this one, though, because this is going to be a very controversial, maybe not controversial, that isn't the right word, maybe more fun, interesting. This is probably going to be one of the most fun podcasts that you'll listen to from me, because it's on a topic that I love to talk about. As you heard from the clip that I started today's show with here on a Tuesday morning, for all you people checking it out right off the bat, I played the clip from this past weekend's pre-race show for Kansas, where Denny Hamlin was obviously asked about his comments about Kyle Busch, which I did talk briefly about last week. I mean, not really briefly. I talked a good amount. But we're going to start the show with this. It is the most talked about thing, I think, among most people on NASCAR Twitter, and, the most interesting thing that has, it's somewhat polarizing, somewhat not, but I think that this needs to just be addressed. And, I really hope that Denny hears this. I really do. He probably won't. It'll pass by his feed and he won't hear it and he won't pay attention to it. And even if he did hear it, he probably wouldn't care. But the truth of the matter is that this is a person, Denny that is, who is, there is no other way to say it. I mean, he is coddled. He is blinded in so many different ways. He is, there's so many different words to describe the guy. And the one thing that he isn't, that I think that is best describing of him, is the simple fact that he is just the most unself-aware person I have heard in such a long time. I mean, look, it's probably easy to pick him out of the hat when it comes to NASCAR drivers in general, because he's the one who talks the most. So obviously, if you're the most vocal person, you're going to obviously be the most controversial person. You're going to be the most known person amongst people because your voice is out there the most. I don't hear, Chase Elliott talking every week. I don't hear William Byron talking every week. I don't hear Christopher Bell, Cole Custer, Brad Keselowski. I don't hear these guys talking every week. I'll hear them in interviews and clips every now and then, but it's not obviously as consistent as somebody who does a Monday podcast every week. And I understand, as I am not immune to this myself, I also understand that if you talk long enough and you say enough things, you're going to say something really freaking stupid. And I am not an exception to that. I'm going to say some stupid things. Hey, I was in the camp of people that thought that Kyle Larson would never come back after he had his whole N-word shabacle so many years ago, I thought that he was just going to be basically banned from the sport, mostly due to the fact of how woke the sport has become and the fact that somebody dared say the N-word out loud in a live stream, that they would be banned from the sport forever and not allowed back because they're too much of a liability. They're too much of a risk as far as sponsors not wanting to give him a chance, or, nobody willing to give him the time of day. But as I've learned, it's obviously not the truth. I mean, he obviously came back the very next year after his suspension. He had a year-long suspension. And then the year after he came back, he joined one of the top teams in NASCAR and has soared his career to new heights because of it. I mean, you could look at Daniel Dye now and say, hey, this is kind of the same thing. I was going to talk about Daniel Dye later, but I'll just briefly mention this now. You want to talk about a guy who, granted, he had a pretty good spot racing for Ram in the Truck Series. And then he goes and does his thing on a live stream where he, makes fun of somebody basically. And he gets fired from his ride there, suspended for a brief amount of time. And now he's back racing ARCA cars again. Like there's nothing wrong. And then, oh, by the way, he's going to be racing Cup races later this year too. So even though the sport is extremely woke, I was obviously wrong about the whole Kyle Larson thing. So I understand that I am not an exception to that. Nobody is an exception to that. You're going to say some dumb things at times, but especially when you talk a lot, you're going to say some dumb things. You're going to say some things that are just flat incorrect. There are a lot of people that are right now in the camp, mostly just obviously Denny Hamlin fans, that are in the camp of agreeing with Denny on the assessment that, as he said on his podcast last week, that basically Kyle Busch is washed. And look, I listened to the whole clip. I talked about this last week, and at the time I didn't listen to the whole clip from his podcast. I had only listened to the brief short that I saw on YouTube that basically summed up his assessment of Kyle as of late. But I went back and I listened to the whole thing because I wanted to make sure that, the clip wasn't taken out of context or, something that he actually, he didn't really harp on Kyle too much, and it was just that clip, and whoever clipped it at Dirty Mo Media, obviously did it to try to get as many clicks as they could. But I went back and listened to that clip, and no. That clip is pretty accurate as far as his assessment of Kyle. In the longer bit, in the full segment of him talking about Kyle, he went on to talk about how washed he basically is, as far as even going back to the latter years of him racing for JGR in the Gen 6 cars. And saying how the writing was on the wall even back then, as early as before the next gen car. When he talks about the latter years of the Gen 6 car when it comes to Joe Gibbs Racing, he fails to remember the fact that in the latter years of Kyle racing in the Gen 6 car, he had won a championship in 2019, had multiple wins in 2020, had wins in 21, and then obviously 22 is the first year of the Gen 7 car, the next gen car. Had just as many top 10s in the Gen 6 car at the end than he usually has in previous years. Not too much of a drop-off in anything as far as stats-wise. Mostly the same average finish. And sure, maybe he didn't win 8 races in those last couple years, but the truth of the matter is that there was no real major red flag drop-off like Denny Hamlin likes to talk about, or likes to make it seem like. Revisionist history is something that obviously he can paint a picture of for somebody who won't go back and look at the stats and won't go back and look at the history or won't remember history, and they'll just sit there and listen to what Denny has to say and just flat out agree with it. And that's fine. The Denny Hamlin fans can do that, and they will, again, believe the revisionist history that Denny wants to paint. But the truth is that him and Kyle were almost mirrors of each other. One just happened to make it farther in the playoffs in a few years than the other one did. But the truth is, I mean, they were basically equals as far as performance year to year in those later years of the Gen 6, and even the last year of the Kyle Busch run at Joe Gibbs Racing in a Gen 7 car. Kyle was in an 18 Gen 7 car for Joe Gibbs Racing in 2022. Obviously, his first year in RCR being 2023, where he also, by the way, did win 3 races and did make the playoffs and had most of the same types of results. Only these last couple of years has Kyle truly fallen off in performance. And if you think about it, the idea that RCR could maybe have hit a bright spot and actually been able to perform pretty well, and then all of a sudden now, as the Gen 7 car has progressed, the fact that the teams like Joe Gibbs Racing, who have premier R&D compared to other Toyota teams, and Penske, who have, again, premier R&D to the other Ford teams, and of course, Chevy, with Hendrick Motorsports having the premier R&D and premier stuff when it comes to Chevy, it makes sense where, as time goes on, the teams that are number one in the OEM's eyes, the Hendrick Motorsports, the Penske, and the Joe Gibbs, would slowly start to widen that gap as far as consistent performances, consistent wins, and consistent speed, comparative to the RFKs, the RCRs, the Legacy Motor Clubs, the Trackhouse Racings, the Spires. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to this. There are times where guys can run well. The RFKs ran well at Darlington. The Spire Club has ran well at certain times throughout this season as well. I mean, hell, there have been times where Spire was the top running Chevy team, beating out all the Hendrick cars. But it does not change the fact that this revisionist history that Denny wants to go ahead and paint is that Kyle Busch, the writing was on the wall. He's 40-some years old, and yet he's washed now. He's not what he used to be. He made the comparison, if you go back and listen to the clip on his podcast, he made the comparison to Jimmy Johnson, where Jimmy Johnson was just, as Denny Hamlin says, dominating everybody year after year after year, and he was. You don't become a 7-time champion by not being very good at dominating your talent or dominating your peers. But what Denny isn't factoring in and what he's leaving out is the fact that Jimmy never left Hendrick Motorsports. And I talked about this last week. I made this comparison myself last week. If you go back and listen to the podcast, I made the comparison to Jimmy in the sense that Jimmy at one point just had a drop-off. And his truly was a drop-off. And yet, at the time, they tried to paint it as though it wasn't Jimmy's fault. It was, issues with the crew. They needed to just shake things up. It wasn't Jimmy's fault that they were slow. It was just issues with either engineers or crew chiefs or pit crew or whoever else they wanted to place the blame on. There's a reason why they moved Chad Knaus, which I still think is one of the biggest crimes, away from Jimmy Johnson and onto William Byron's car, and then giving Jimmy Johnson Kevin Mendeering. And they tried to paint the picture as though that was going to solve the issues of Jimmy being slow. It didn't. The issue was Jimmy. Whatever the issue was, as far as him being slow, whether it was him not being as committed because he got older, whether it was the actual fact that he was getting older and it was his age that was not allowing him to process things or keep up with guys, or whatever the reasoning is, in that case, it's Jimmy. But in the Kyle Busch case, look, you put him in any other equipment, in any other series, he's still running up towards the front, he's still winning races. Not to mention the fact that the actual coinciding of him slowly starting to decline and really hitting a wall where all of a sudden now he's not running well is RCR. To just ignore that is not fair. It is not just as far as making your argument. And then again, to try to whitewash history and say that he was not very good at JGR even before he left is just a lie. You're just lying at that point. It's his attempt to try to make his argument valid. Now, I don't know if he has a personal issue with him. I don't know why he would. As far as I know, they've always been on somewhat okay terms. I mean, they've had their obvious run-ins on the track in the past, and I can't imagine that Kyle Busch is the easiest person to get along with. But I also can't imagine that Denny Hamlin's the easiest person to get along with either. He doesn't exactly give me the vibes that you could ever have a differing opinion of him and be right and him actually admit to you being right. To me, I always get the vibes that Denny's always right, no matter what. Funny enough, one of Denny's friends went on and said something exactly like that some odd months ago when his supposed good friend Kyle Larson had a run-in with Denny on track, and in Kyle Larson's exact words, he said, "It's probably my fault anyways, because Denny's always right." So I'm not out of bounds on this one. Not to mention the fact, if you were to be an unbiased person, if you're a non-Denny Hamlin fan or even a non-Denny Hamlin hater, if you're just neutral on the guy, if you go listen to his podcast, it is so obvious that the co-hosts are just there to be people for him to bounce his own ideas off of and not actually get any sort of real criticism back towards him, but instead to just repeat back what he once said to him to validate his opinions, to validate his feelings, and to have somebody tell him, "Yes, Denny, you're right." And if you didn't know, that's the exact definition of a ass kisser or a yes man. So when that is the environment that he has put himself in, an echo chamber of somebody to just sit there and tell him how correct he is and how right he is about anything he has to say and on anything. It could be something as simple as an opinion on the sport itself, an opinion on a driver, or something nothing to do with NASCAR, just something outside of NASCAR. They will tell him how correct he is and how he can do no wrong. They tried to call him out one time on one of his podcasts, and they basically shut him down. Or excuse me, he basically shut them down. Basically calling them stupid and idiotic and how wrong they were. And trust me, as far as I've seen, they have not ever attempted again to tell Denny he's wrong about anything. But that's fine. You know, some people like to surround themselves with that and like to surround themselves in an echo chamber of somebody to just tell them how right they are. And when you're paid millions of dollars and you can pay those people to just sit there and be your echo chamber, you're allotted that privilege. But I'll be the one to sit here and try my best to break that echo chamber by saying that this idea that Denny Hamlin can sit there and throw stones at Kyle Busch as though he's just so bad now because he's gone to a different team, because the team that Denny is still at and he's been allotted to stay at his entire career doesn't like Kyle anymore because Kyle left. They couldn't afford Kyle anymore, so he went elsewhere. And because Kyle didn't, again, bow to the Joe Gibbs Racing crew and say, "Yes, I will take a pay cut to allow you to stay because we lost a major sponsor." No, instead, he wants what he knows he's owed. He wants to be paid his value as a multi-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and a driver who has not only won 63 races in Cup, but 200 races in total across all three series. And I know it's easy to say, well, yes, you know, I was of that camp as well. I'm saying, look, it's easy to beat up on 18 and 19-year-old kids in the truck series who are just getting their first start and rack up a bunch of wins that way and rack up a bunch of wins in the O'Reilly series against similar talent. And I understand that. But the truth is he's still got to show up. He's still got to put in the effort, and he's still got to go on track and still try to win. And there's much more factors in a race than just him going out there and running. There's cautions. There's unforeseen circumstances. There's stuff like we saw last weekend at Kansas where a car 6 laps down will break something or blow a tire or whatever the hell happened to Cody Ware and cause a caution with just 2 to go. Even though you had the race win in hand, it's stolen from you and given to somebody else because of racing. It's circumstances. But that's always been in racing. Always will be. And I find it hilarious to me that no one has attempted even to try to break this echo chamber on Denny and say, hey, dude, I don't know if you know this or not, but you, honestly, privileged, for the last 20 years of your career have been allowed to stay at the exact same team, in the exact same car, with mostly the same people, with, again, for about 90 to 95% of your career, the same sponsor. And not only that, but it was an equipment that was, for a good amount of your career, top notch. For a good amount of your career was championship contending. I mean, looking at the numbers, 2006 was his first full-time season in the NASCAR Cup Series, Denny Hamlin, that is. And since 2006, he has had, 2006 was his first season of full-time, and yet he was 3rd in the point standings. 8th in 2008, 5th in 2009, the infamous choke in 2010 where he finished 2nd to Jimmy Johnson, and a sprinkling of 9th, 6th, 3rd, 9th, 6th, 6th, 11, 4, 4, 3, 5, 5, and 8, and 2, as far as his finishing in the point standings at the end of the years. And that's over the past 20 years. And just about every season, he's been able to win at least one race full-time besides just 1 year in 2018. So his entire career he's been with the same group. Maybe not the same exact people on his crew, but the same team, same car, same number, most of the same sponsor. Extremely stable conditions for somebody. And yet he can sit there and judge somebody else who, by the way, I don't care about the race number, the amount of race wins. Anybody and their mother would put Kyle Busch above Denny Hamlin in the all-time ranks. I don't care if Denny passes him and wins. He doesn't have as many championships. He was not nearly as dominant as Kyle was in certain years. So it's easy for somebody to be in the type of position that Denny is, who has, as I said, consistently been in the exact same spot his entire career, comfortable, and to now sit in a position of being in top-notch equipment and point the finger at somebody else and say that they're off, that they're losing it, even though either intentionally or ignorantly ignoring the obvious fact that that person he's calling out is in much lesser equipment than he ever has been in his entire career. I don't think anybody would sit there and try to make the argument that the 8 car should be running better than it is. I don't think anybody with the right frame of mind would be sitting there saying that 8 car should be running top 10 or even top 15 every week. I mean, even if you want to point out the obvious, I mean, there are weeks where we've seen weeks of JGR cars or Penske cars or Hendrick cars who have just flat out missed it with no issues within the race, and yet they're just consistently running 32nd, 33rd, just on speed. We've seen Joey Logano have that happen to him multiple times this season. We saw that happen to William Byron a couple weeks ago. We've seen it happen to multiple top guys who have just shown up and not had the speed and then just kind of rode mid to back of the pack. And they're supposed to be the cream of the crop. They're supposed to be the guys that are always running top 15, always running top 10, always up there in speed. And the only reason that they shouldn't be up there in speed is because of some sort of mechanical issue or some sort of caution that they're unintentionally involved in. But I find it hilarious that Denny can sit there and at the same time, at other points in his podcast days and previous episodes, he can sit there and say things like, it's really tough setting up these cars. It's, everybody's so close together that if you just miss it a little bit or, if you just don't have the right stuff, you just have no chance. I mean, he's talked about consistently that if the smaller end teams, they just don't have a chance. It doesn't matter how close the next gen car is. If you're just a team that doesn't have the funding or doesn't have the R&D or doesn't have the money behind it or doesn't have the resources or they just don't have it, well then you have no chance. And that's out of Denny Hamlin's mouth. So why is it that when somebody is faced with that exact situation, with that exact scenario that he describes as far as being put in a position of a team that just doesn't obviously have it and doesn't have the speed at all, not even flashes of it, they just don't have it, period. Why is it that he feels as though he can sit there and point the finger and scrutinize Kyle for being stuck in that position and not be consistent? Not always have the same feelings. Always, sometimes, for some odd reason, just ignore certain factors and, push other things to the side. And, I don't remember saying that. When it comes to certain different people, he obviously can, for some reason, have different feelings or say different things, and yet again, he's not challenged on any of those things. He's not ever pressured about how he can have feelings on one person and have different feelings on somebody else who's in the exact same situation. And that, to me, is the epitome of why Denny Hamlin can never, ever consistently have anybody who actually is a fan of him and or likes him. I find it hilarious that Denny Hamlin actually has true hardcore fans. Because to me, if you're a Denny Hamlin fan, I just chalk you up to somebody who either A, doesn't pay attention to him at all and doesn't actually listen to the things that he says or feels or does, and you don't actually know him as a person, or you don't even try to learn about who he is as a person. You just like the fact that he's fast now. Key word about that, now he's fast. You just like the fact that he's fast now. And he's good now. It's either that and you're a bandwagon fan, or you just like people who are just flat out pieces of shit. Who are just flat out unlikable people. Which to me says more about you than anything. And the fact that you would actually like somebody like that who is openly just not somebody who you want to associate and or be around. I mean, who wants to be inundated with somebody who just, again, only wants to be coddled and be told how right they are and always never be wrong and never lose and never anything? Who wants to surround themselves with that? Who wants to live with that? At some point, you have to just, you'd be done with it. You just have to throw your hands up and go, I can't handle anymore. I'm done. I can't. I'm done. I don't know how people can handle that. I know why his co-hosts can handle it. It's because they're paid to handle it. And at this point, if they're not somebody who isn't self-aware of that, they need help. But if they are self-aware of it, they must just tell themselves on a consistent basis how, well, part of the money that I'm paid is to just put up with this. And it's part of the reason why I'm paid is to coddle this man-child and tell him how right he is about everything. Because if there was one thing that Kyle Busch did say that Jesus Christ, Denny Hamlin needs to listen to and needs to actually, if there was anything that could actually get to him, as far as maybe making him open his eyes and actually say the words, I was wrong, it's the simple fact that I would love to see Denny try to get into anything else other than the car he's been in that isn't a top-level car. And I'd love to see him try to run it. I'd love to see what he would do. And I'd love to see how frustrated he would get. And how I know he would just be at the verge where he would just say, I'm done, I quit. And then he couldn't handle it. Because his entire career, all he's known is top-level equipment. That's all he's given. That's all he's had his entire career in Cup. Is the best of the best. He's never had to be like Chris Buescher, who had to go through Front Row Motorsports and eat shit for how many years before he actually got to a decent car, who, by the way, isn't even that decent. I know I rag on Alex Bowman, but I'd love to see him try to make a run like Alex Bowman did, where he was just in shit equipment, waiting for the right opportunity, and then he finally gets the right opportunity. And you know what? There are people who've been in that same spot who've done worse. Speaking on Alex Bowman. I mean, there's so many people in Cup Series. I'd love to see Denny Hamlin try to take a run like Josh Berry did, where he had to, talk about eating shit for how many years. Or have to be like any of these other guys who are stuck in short track racing just waiting for their opportunity, but never got their opportunity. Have never gotten that shot. I'd love to see how he would handle that. But no, he instead is consistently always handed good equipment. He's always been given good. Every single year of his entire Cup Series career, he has been given stuff that is good enough to win races at any point during the season. I'm not sitting there saying that every single week he shows up, the car he's given can win the race. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that every single year he's given good enough stuff. He's given above average equipment every single fucking year of his career. So for him to sit there and look, I'm not the biggest Kyle Busch fan. I still think him as a person, he's not obviously the most easy to get along with. He comes across as kind of a prick himself. But to sit there and to point the finger at Kyle and say he's lost a step is bullshit. Now, if Kyle, because Kyle's not coming back to RCR, it's done. And as far as what I see, if there's one thing I agree on what Denny pointed out in that clip that I listened to from his podcast last week, if there's only one thing I agree with, is the fact that right now there's only 2 destinations where I feel like Kyle could go. One is to replace Alex Bowman in the 48, and 2 is one of the other 2 options in the Spire, meaning either Michael McDowell's car or Daniel Suarez's car, because Carson ain't going anywhere. As far as right now, those are Kyle's only 2 destinations where he can go from here. He stays within the Chevy camp. Either way, as far as I feel, it's an improvement. Spire has shown more consistently as of late that they can run top 10, they can run top 5, they can have chances at wins. And they've actually shown speed at literally any track. RCR has not done that. And Hendrick Motorsports speaks for itself. It's 1A equipment when it comes to Chevrolet. He's in the 48. He's going to be just fine. But my point is that if he goes to either one of those 2, if and when he goes to either one of those 2 teams and he leaves RCR at the end of the season, and we see the same thing as far as top 10s, top 5s, laps led, wins, average finish, all the shit that matters, if we see similar numbers in that equipment to the last few years that he's had in RCR, then fine. I'll admit it again. I have no problem being wrong. I'm willing to admit that I'm wrong. I don't have to sit there and whitewash history and make people believe that I never said those things or I never believed those things. I'll admit that I was wrong. But right now, in the position that he's in, to say those things and just throw him under the bus like that is bullshit. And to almost paint it as like, you're one of the best, you should just be able to just go faster. That, to me, that type of response of just go faster. Just be better. That, to me, comes from a extremely privileged perspective of somebody who, again, always has the best shit. Always has the top end shit. Only somebody who is in that type of position can come and say those types of things and have that perspective. And to ignore that, if you're a fan sitting there ignoring that, ignoring the fact that he's coming, Denny that is, coming from a position of privilege, being in 1A equipment every week, ignoring that and saying, no, if they were to swap rides, it'd be similar. There's a reason why Kyle is going out in response and saying, yeah, the fucking minute that Denny wants to trade rides, I won't hesitate. You try to drive this fucking 8 car and you figure out how the fuck to finish top 10 in this thing on a consistent basis. And if you were to be able to do that, then fine. But until then, shut the fuck up. Because you want to talk about somebody who doesn't know shit about what it's like to be in shit-ass equipment like that. Denny is a prime example. And yet again, no one challenges him on this. No one points this out to him. He's allowed to just sit there and speak his mind and have whatever opinions he wants, no matter how wrong they are. He can just say whatever the fuck he wants. And then if anybody dare say anything back to him in response that, hey, you might be wrong. You might be saying something real fucking stupid right now. You might want to shut the fuck up. Then you're in the wrong. Then you're the one with the issue. As you heard from the clip that started our show, I was just faced with, I knew I had to tiptoe around it. I knew I had to be careful about what I said. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. He didn't tiptoe around it. He literally flat out said that Kyle is the issue. He backhandedly said something like, I know RCR isn't very good, but he's fallen off. And put it all on Kyle. And then also, by the way, painted the picture that clip from Bristol last week that I played, where his crew chief is sitting there complaining on the radio about how, what's wrong with the car now? I don't know what the fuck is wrong with the car. Denny painted that as the crew chief and the spotter for the 8 car being frustrated with Kyle and not over the fact that they can't figure out what the fuck is wrong with the car. Even though it was so obvious that the complaints that the 8 car crew chief, Jim Poland, had were about the fact that he couldn't figure out the car. And then it wasn't Kyle. It's genuine frustration from everybody over the fact that they can't. And Kyle said it himself. It's genuine frustration over the fact that no one on the team can figure it out. They can't figure out why they're slow. It's the same reason why numbnuts on DBC fucking Tommy Baldwin took full blame in the clip where he talks about he took full blame for Cody Ware's spin at Kansas with 2 to go. In that clip, he talks about how, we're showing up every week and we're just shit. We're just slow. And we can't figure out why. I guarantee you that the Haas factory team that Cole Custer is driving has the exact same issue. I guarantee you that the Legacy Club cars, the 42 and the 43, have the exact same issue. I guarantee you that there are weeks where the RFK cars have that same issue. Or the Trackhouse cars, I guarantee you the Trackhouse cars have that exact same complaint. That they can't figure out why now all of a sudden Ross Chastain is running 20th on a consistent basis and he can't even barely break the top 10 more than 2 weeks of this season. But Denny, is Ross washed? Is Ross Chastain, the guy who just a few years ago in the next gen car finished second in the point standings, was winning races every year, now all of a sudden can't finish above 20th? Is that just Ross? Is Connor Zilic just the biggest bust? The fact that he can't be running higher than 30th for most of the race last week at Kansas, Connor's just a bust, I guess. I guess Connor Zilic is just a bus driver. He's not as good as we thought he was. I guess he's just no good. Like, what the fuck are we talking? Like, this is a guy who should know more than me. You've been in the fucking sport for 20 years, and yet you're so goddamn sheltered. You're so surrounded by yes men and so surrounded by ass kissers that you're allowed to sit there and say the dumbest shit. And you're never challenged. And because of that, you are now so uneducated yourself, and you sound so stupid yourself, and yet somehow I, who's only just a lifelong fan, who's never actually been in the garage, who's never actually drove one of these fucking cars, is more educated than you. Understands this more than you. And it shocks me that there's anybody out there who listens to this guy and goes, yeah, Denny's just so smart. He's just a smart guy. He knows everything. He's always right. Give me that fucking bullshit about that. I'd love to see Denny in the 8 car. I'd love to see it. And I'd love to hear his response after driving the 8 car for a few weeks. And I want to see where he finishes. This whole bullshit about, well, he should be outrunning Austin Dillon a lot more. Austin's only won 10 races or whatever the fuck it is. And Kyle's a 2-time champion, and that's why he's washed, because he's now outrunning his teammate. Oh, and maybe it's because the fucking cars are made out of the same exact goddamn garage area, and all these cars are made to be the exact same thing. And so therefore, you end up showing up with the exact same shit. And a driver is only allowed to be able to do so much. Not to mention the fact that, as far as I've seen, Kyle's been in more wrecks this year than Austin has. And he's still beating him in points. I'm done. I'm done ranting. Moving on. I had clips to play that I wanted to play. And mostly it was just Kyle and his response. I mean, there's no point at this point. I mean, Kyle basically is, his response to Denny is just, you know, look, drive my car and see how you feel. Come talk to me when you drive my car and feel how the 8 car drives. You know, that's Kyle's response at this point, which is just true. I mean, that's all you really need to say. It's just, I 1 week. Pick a fucking week and drive the 8 car. And Kyle will drive the 11. And then you see how it feels. And we'll see how Kyle does. And we'll see how you do. And we'll see how your opinion changes after that. That being said, I mean, God, all my passion was in that. I did have a couple of other things I wanted to touch on. Speaking of Daniel Dye, we'll get into this a little bit more. Daniel Dye, if anybody who doesn't remember, was involved in some controversy. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but I'll recap that. Long story short, Daniel Dye was on Brent Cruz's live stream on Whatnot, and he did a gay voice mocking David Malukas. Now, what's funny is that actually David Malukas had a response. I didn't listen to the clip of what David actually said, but he basically said something along the lines of, like, I don't know who that is, which is funny to me because it's like, yes, you do. That's a cop-out way of trying to, like, oh, Daniel Dye is so low, I don't even know who he is. Yeah, okay, David Malukas. You drive a fucking Indy car, and you want to talk about NASCAR ratings being bad. IndyCar can't fucking pull over 1 million people to save their lives. That being said, I'm all worked up now. That being said, Daniel Dye, after being indefinitely suspended from his ride in the Truck Series, driving for Kaulig Racing in the Ram truck, and then subsequently being replaced by Corey LaJoie, was lifted of his suspension and is now racing full-time ARCA again. He also, it was announced either yesterday or earlier today. It was earlier today, excuse me. I'm recording this Monday. So for you, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, it would be yesterday. It was announced that Live Fast Motorsports is actually going to allow Daniel Dye to race 4 races this season in the Cup Series. So you know what? Shout out to Daniel Dye. Because I saw a lot of other people like, I saw something about, oh, how is it that this guy keeps getting rides? Here, I'll go ahead and read some of the comments from the announcement of Daniel Dye Racing Cup. Somebody commented saying, how does this man keep falling upwards? Somebody commented, Kyle Larson simulator. A lot of other people just posted memes of sadness. Complete sensitivity training, get promoted. Oh man, more Kyle Larson comments. Um, the point is,
Upon further
this
review,
whole
that
thing.
is not.
Shut up, Denny. The point is, Daniel Dye getting these opportunities, whether it be in the Cup Series or ARCA or whatever. I'm happy that he didn't get completely whitewashed out of NASCAR. You know, I understand some people might have been offended by it, but I think at the end of the day, no matter how hard the NASCAR Twitter fan tries to make NASCAR woke, and no matter how much NASCAR does lean into the fact that they are accepting a lot more woke things within the sport, NASCAR is, always has been, and probably always will be, a Southern, right wing leaning, Republican esque, America kind of sport. And whether you like it or not, that contingent of fan finds what Daniel Dye did funny. And also at the same time, I myself found it funny. I died laughing at it. I thought it was a funny impression. It wasn't actually meant to be totally accurate. It was just him making jokes on a dumb live stream. And at the time, I remember I said, you know, look, you got to be smarter than that because, you know, you're in a good ride and you got to remember what sports you're in. I remember saying that about Daniel. But at the same time, people need to realize that stuff just doesn't matter. It really doesn't. It never has, and it never really should. If you take offense to somebody making fun of either your voice or something about the way that you look or the fact that they're mocking something about you, if you're a gay person and they mock the gay voice, look, then you're not exactly fully comfortable in your own shoes and you need to take a look in the mirror. I had the same problem myself when I was, you know, obviously still, I was like a kid and I was having this issue myself, but I can speak from the perspective of, look, when I was younger, I definitely let a lot of things get to me that I shouldn't have. Like anybody in school or when you're a kid, you know, stuff when you're a kid gets to you when you're in high school or middle school or elementary school. Or if they make fun of something about you that you're insecure about, or, you know, something about the way that you look or the way that you dress or the way that you sound or, you know, whatever. And you let it get to you and you let it bug you. That's something that's on you. That's not on them. Sure, you can sit there and, you know, stop bullying me, but no one's, the more you try to tell somebody to stop bullying you, the more they're just going to want to keep bullying you. The more that you allow yourself to obviously be shown to be, you know, affected personally by something, the more they're going to keep doing it to you. So it's on you, the person specifically, it's on you to allow it to just roll off your back and not let it affect you. And this goes to all NASCAR fans who are like, look, you might have been a newer NASCAR fan and you might not have been around in the early 2000s or the 90s or the 80s or whatever. Maybe you were born in the 2000s and you only just became a fan in the 2010s and the teens. And so you're late to the party and all you ever know is the playoffs. Jesus Christ, how sad of a existence must that be, that you only ever know the playoffs as a NASCAR fan. But if you want to be a fan, you got to kind of somewhat understand the history of it. And also you have to understand the fandom that you're joining. You're already joining a party that's already started. You can't come in and change the party to mold and contort itself to what you want it to be. Party's already what it is. Can't change it no matter how hard you try. And funny enough, the more you try to change it, the more the party dies. And this goes to my next topic I wanted to talk about, was the whole, something about the ratings was brought up again. And how somebody pointed out that the massive dip in viewership over even the last 10 years, from 2016 to 2026, comparing the Bristol race from 2016 to the Bristol race from not this past weekend, but the weekend before, I mean, it's at an all-time low. I mean, we've hit the 1 millions. There was no rain delay. There was no difference as far as what channel they were on. It wasn't a Fox to FS1 thing. NASCAR's been on FS1 enough, and we've had years and years and years of consistent ratings on when NASCAR's on FS1. And comparing the Bristol race from back in 2016, where we had 3+ million viewers, which, by the way, at the time was even low then, to what we had a couple weekends ago at Bristol when Gibbs won. It was at 1.9 million. And like I said, there was no rain delay. Wasn't on a Monday. It's at the same time, scheduled time, on FS1. Same channel it's always been on. Same everything. And it's not a chase thing. It's not, oh, because it's the chase. It's the middle of the season. It's the regular season. It's not a playoffs versus chase thing. It's just a matter of, this is where we're at now. And you, certain fans who allow yourselves to get so offended and so affected by the littlest of things, have now gotten us to the point where you have shackled the drivers personality-wise so much to where they can basically only speak like politicians. And even sometimes when they speak like politicians, that it offends you. Look, there are 3 factors in my eyes that are the biggest reasons as to why the sport is in the state that it's in and why it has fallen off of the cliff that it has. There are 3 things. 1, the car. The car, since the COT was introduced, has only provided an extremely, at times, boring, unpleasant, neutered version of what racing used to be before the car. And it has only gotten worse as time has gone on, to the point where the fun, amazing races that we can point out come in such small doses that they are the same replayed highlights to promote the sport that we've had for the last God knows how many years. So the car is 1. And trust me, the next gen car is no better. It is not better. Number 2 is ownership. The ownership group of the France family and whoever they have appointed to be either presidents or CEOs or competition directors or whomever, the people that they have put in charge have consistently, on a yearly basis, up until this past offseason, made atrocious after atrocious after atrocious decision that have only hindered and hurt the sport in so many different various ways. They have introduced things like stage racing. which to the newer fan who only started watching from 2017 on, that's all they know is stage racing. But if they were to watch any other version of racing on the planet, not just motorsports, but just any sort of racing anywhere, there is nothing like this. There is no race for a certain amount of laps and then pause the race, award points, and then start the race again. And then pause the race again, award more points, and then resume the race again, and then finish the race. Every other type of racing, the only two flags that you're guaranteed to see, well, three, I guess. The only three guaranteed flags that you're guaranteed to see every single race are the green flag, the white flag, and the checkered flag. Every other type of motorsport, those are the only three flags that you're guaranteed to see. It's not a guarantee that you're going to see a caution. It's not a guarantee that you're going to see a red flag. It's not a guarantee that somebody's going to get black flagged. These are all circumstantial things that may or may not happen during the course of the race. Every other motorsport only has those three specific flags that you're guaranteed to see. In NASCAR, that's not the case. In NASCAR, you are guaranteed to see four. You're guaranteed to see the green, you're guaranteed to see the yellow, and you're guaranteed to see the white and the checkered. It should never be, as that famous Carl Edwards clip says, there should never ever be a mandatory caution during a race. I don't care how many points you award to the top 10, the top 15, the top whomever. You are hurting anybody who goes out there and gains an advantage over any other driver behind them. You can sit there and say, well, we award the top 10 in points. Funny enough, what about 11th on back? What's the award for them? The advantage that 11th may gain on 20th is now vanished, and they're not awarded for their position. You only award points to the top 10. You don't award points to the 11th place car that went out and gained an advantage over 20th or 15th or 13th or whomever. Those guys are ignored. And so even though you award points to the top 10, it's still an unfair thing, and it's not a just thing to do to 11th on back. And at that point, if you're 11th on back, the fucking advantage you get for the first 2/3 of the race, or however long the stages are, is vanished, and it doesn't matter. So stage racing is, to me, one of the most detrimental things to the sport that was added over the last God knows how many years. But they've done other things. They've added the caution clock at times in the truck series, for anybody who remembers that, where it was a similar thing to the stages, where once the green flag would fly, they would start a literal timer, where after, I don't know what it was, 15, 20 minutes, whatever the time was, if there was not a caution in that amount of time, once the clock ran out, they threw a caution. Or NASCAR's infamous overtime line. Because instead of them wanting to wait until they got all the way back around to the start-finish line on green-white checkers, instead of wanting to wait that long because they would get to the start-finish line on like a super speedway at Talladega or Daytona, and then they'd wreck off of 4, and then they'd have to re-rack them all over again. And so then, because they implemented the unlimited amount of green-white checkers, they went ahead and said, well, we don't want to have too many green-white checkers, so instead of just limiting them again, Instead, we'd rather just put a line going down the back of all of the tracks that we run for all 36 races. And instead of racing back to the start-finish line to get the end of the green, white, checkered, they'd race to the caution line. And that in it itself was stupid. Or the unbelievable amounts of either calls when it wasn't supposed to happen or non-calls when it should have happened when it came to, speaking of super speedways, the double yellow line rule. Where if you were forced below the yellow line, then it's okay to make a pass because you were forced below the yellow line. But if you're not forced below the yellow line and you make a pass, therefore you're penalized. And we saw on a consistent basis that rule apply to some and not apply to others. I mean, there are some clips on YouTube of just, I mean, good God, the amount of times that certain people would just get away with passing below the yellow line. And, well, that's pretty obviously not, he wasn't forced down there. He just chose to go down there. And he wasn't penalized. And then you have the instance like Reagan Smith at Talladega where he's penalized, even though he was forced below the yellow line. But instead they gave the win away and gave it to Tony Stewart. It's stuff like that that drives people away. And that's all NASCAR people, executives or people in the tower controlling the race or whomever, getting their fingers within the actual product. As a fan, I don't care about whoever is controlling the race. I don't care about who's controlling the button for the caution, and I shouldn't care. I shouldn't care about Brett Bodine sitting over there in turn 1 or wherever looking for rain. And if he sees rain or not, I shouldn't care. I should care about the people on the track. And speaking on the people on the track, they're the third biggest issue. Or they're part of the third biggest issue, which is the fact that all the guys are boring. All the guys are vanilla. You get them in front of a camera. I've said this plenty of times. You get them in front of a camera, and I mean, they're unbearable. Can't listen to them talk for more than 2 minutes without just wanting to go to bed. No personality. No enthusiasm when they win half the time. It's like these guys don't even care. I complained about William Sawalich after his first O'Reilly Series win. I mean, he was on the radio like, hey, yeah, thanks. Great guy, great job, guys. His first O'Reilly Series race win in his entire career. Struggled a good amount last year and this year. Finally gets that first win, and that's just nothing. Just nothing. No enthusiasm. Almost like he doesn't care. He gets out of the car and, yeah, I'm real happy. No jumping up and down. No yelling. Hey, at least Ty Gibbs was excited that he finally won his first Cup race. Other times it's like guys just, they don't even care at all. It's like, well, why are you doing this job? I mean, 90% of the fucking people that race in NASCAR and in general don't have to work because they got rich families. So it's like, if you don't want to be here, then why are you here? Why are you showing up? And also, I can't put all the blame on the drivers because some drivers have tried to show personality in the past and they've been shut down by fans who have almost tried intentionally to like neuter them. Say anything controversial, do anything controversial against the grain. Try to actually show your actual personality, and you're shut down and criticized by everybody. That's the one thing I'll give Denny Hamlin credit for. At least he continues to show his own personality and he doesn't care. It's probably the only positive thing I can say about him is the fact that he doesn't allow other people to silence him. And a lot of it, again, like I said, it's on you people. It's on you fans. You know, like, we had fun people. We had fun personalities. We had people that had flair. We had people that showed enthusiasm about winning races or being involved in something, you know, rec-wise or whatever. We used to have people that would get in other drivers' faces and wouldn't just, you know, oh, I'll call him on Wednesday. We'll talk about it later on the phone. Brother, he's 50 feet down the fucking pit road from you. Why don't you just go talk to him right now? No, we'll talk on Wednesday. I'll call him on Wednesday. He just ran you over for the win. Go fucking talk to him. Go fucking say something to him. Oh no, I'll call him on Wednesday. The fuck is that? That's everybody though. I mean, fuck, the only people that get in people's faces are the old guys. You know? Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano. Some of the older guys are the only ones that actually get in people's faces. Everybody else just wants to talk on the phone. And like I said, a lot of it is, it's all of you. It's all you people. Just neutering all the drivers. All right. So I had to, you're not going to notice because obviously I'm just going to cut this together, but I had to take a small break. I don't know what's going on with my voice. My throat is, I don't know if I was just talking too hard or yelling too hard or what, but my throat is starting to hurt. So I'm going to try to get through this pretty quick. I'm going to kind of skim over the O'Reilly Series race. I'm sorry. I did not catch a good amount of this, unfortunately. I wasn't able to sit down and watch this one. The one main thing that I did see was the Carson Quaffle flip at the start of the race. I did catch that. I was pretty preoccupied with some other stuff this past weekend. So sue me that I didn't watch both races. But I saw the Carson Quaffle flip. I'm not going to put a whole lot of blame on anybody there as far as who was at the wrong. I saw some other people, mainly NASCAR people, obviously, NASCAR affiliated people, complaining about the fact that the caution didn't come out soon enough. Listen, whether that really played that much of a factor into that contact happening afterwards or not, it was a racing deal that happened between the 1 and the 88 of William Byron. I'm going to chalk it up to nothing more than that. It sucks that it happened for Carson. I'm shocked that he flipped. It was just a very odd wreck as a whole. And it sucks for Parker, too. I think Parker was the one who did hit Quaffle as he was flipping down the backstretch. But because Parker finished 36th when Carson finished 37th. So sucks on those two. Those two are, you know, chase contenders. Austin Hill also got into a crash. That was with his teammate. I did see that one too. But that was obviously Austin Hill. He just was under his teammate and got loose and collected William Sawalich, which is why it's surprising that Sawalich even finished 20th. I mean, he looked like he hit him a ton in the front end. I thought that would have ended Swalich's day. But it did not. Sawalich ended up finishing only like 2 laps down in 20th. And then obviously congrats to Taylor Gray. I mean, it sucks I missed Taylor Gray's, I believe his first O'Reilly Series victory. Leading 48 laps and beating out Sheldon Creed's there that day at the end. But look, good for Taylor Gray. Like I said, I'm sorry to anybody. I didn't catch the race. Some interesting names here towards the front. Jesse Love had himself a good finish, though. He finished 4th. being the good RCR driver for the O'Reilly series there. Brent Cruz with the top 5. I'm telling you, man, I don't know where the points. Let's take a look at the point standings here, because I was thinking, like, Brent's full time now, and he's already 16th. Yeah. 4 less races than everybody else, and he's already 16th in points. He's down 330 to Justin Allgaier, comparing that to Raja, who, by the way, did not run that great. I mean, he can make up that gap. He can make up that gap. Raja did not run that well as well. Like I said, he finished 21st. I'm not sure if he was involved in any wreck himself, but not a good finish for him. And if he keeps running the way that he has, he's going to be knocked out of that top 12 spot. And if Cruz keeps running the way he has, he's going to get that 12 spot. So remember, I've been talking the last couple of weeks about how, who's going to get that 12th spot in the O'Reilly series. It might be Brent Cruz if he stays on it. If he stays on it and he keeps running the way he has, top 5 finish here. I believe this is his first mile and a half, and he finished top 5. Technically mile and a half, because I think he ran Darlington, but they don't count that as, an intermediate. It's a little bit shorter than a mile and a half, so it doesn't count. But if Cruz keeps running the way that he has, he's going to be just fine. He'll probably get into the chase here at the end of the season. Custer with the 7th place finish. It was weird seeing Custer back in the 0 car, starting 36th and got himself up to 7th. Sam Mayer with a top 10, as well as Ryan Sieg. Dean Thompson finished 11th. Corey Day only 12th. He did lead 26 laps. Not sure, again, like I said, didn't catch the race, so not sure if those were legit or if those were during a pit cycle. Sammy Smith with the 16th, not too high up for Smith. And kind of just looking down the board, nothing too crazy or different there. Alfredo, sucks that he was involved in a crash, finishing 30th. I saw that he had some stage points as well, but like I said, I was sad I didn't catch it, but congrats to Taylor Gray, like I said, on getting his first O'Reilly Series win. And on to the Cup Series race, I'm not really going to go through too much when it comes to the Cup Series race as well. Reddick ended up sneaking out a win there at the end because of the Cody Ware 2 laps to go wreck. I know that Hamlin was obviously upset about that, and he called out Rick Ware Racing for sticking Cody Ware out there all by himself in a strategy that supposedly was never going to work. I guess he was on 60-lap old tires, and that's the reason why he had the issues that he had. 6 laps down. Listen, if there's one thing I want to talk about, it's this, because I saw a lot of people hang on. I'm going to take a drink here. I saw a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, mostly NASCAR related people, complaining about the fact that Cody was 6 laps down and he changed the outcome of the race with his caution with 2 to go, and almost like they wanted him to just get off the track before the race was over, and like he wasn't allowed to finish the race because of the X amount of laps that he was down. I understand the frustration of 11 fans, and I understand the frustration of some people like, oh, well, it takes away a win from somebody who probably deserved it, and blah, 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 blah. Look, the race ain't over till it's over. You want to talk about race manipulation as far as stuff that, manipulates the race. Like I said earlier, the stage cautions do more race manipulation than anything that has ever happened by any driver on the racetrack. Those are more of a detriment to the race itself than any thing that a driver has done on track, maybe ever. Because they are every race manipulating the race in an unfair way, not once, but twice. And I already went on my rant earlier about it, so I'm not going to do it again. Point being, Cody Ware is 6 laps down, and he loses the car. This is not the first time that this has happened, where a car, multiple laps down, driven by a driver who probably isn't very good and not so great equipment, spins out late in the race, bring out a late race caution when there was no other caution for cause the entire race, and changes the outcome of the race, where somebody who had a good lead at the end was going to drive off to victory if there was no caution, doesn't get the win because there's a late race caution and somebody does a different pit strategy than them, or something happens on the restart or whatever, and it doesn't allow said driver to win the race anymore, and it gives it to somebody else. This is not the first time. As I said, it will not be the last. So, to sit there and to micromanage, whatever put this under a microscope, whatever the term you want to use, and to just get so uptight and so upset about this, it does nothing. It does nothing to benefit the sport. It does nothing as far as an argument. There's no reason for this argument at all. This has happened since the inception of the sport. This is always a random possibility. If you're the guy out there with a 2-second lead on second place, cruising to victory, and the caution comes out and it costs you the race because you either make a mistake or your crew makes a mistake, or you get beat off the restart, or you take 4 when somebody else takes 2, or you take 2 when somebody else takes 4 and they beat you for it. Whatever happens, and you don't get the win, that's racing, dude. Shit happens. That happens in... Now, if you want to talk about something that happens in every motorsport, that literally can happen and does happen in almost every motorsport. Where you can have a giant lead, only a few laps left, and caution comes out, completely changes the course of the race, closes up that gap that you had, and now all of a sudden on a restart late in the race, you either make a mistake or somebody else just straight up beats you and you lose the race because of it. You can sit there and pout and be mad about it all you want, but that's racing, man. Overtime, green, white checkers or not, every motorsport has that. So, to be one of these NASCAR-related people where it's like, oh, man, come on, though. I mean, he's how many laps down? People are making it seem like because he was 6 laps down that he shouldn't even be on the track. And I understand the whole argument of, like, why were you doing this weird, different strategy of running 60 laps? It's like, look, it's like Tommy Baldwin said in that clip. I talked about this earlier. It's like Tommy Baldwin said, look, we were shit off the jump. We're shit in practice. We're shit off the truck. We're shit in the race. We're trying something different. And whether it would have worked, whether it wouldn't have worked, whether it was even worth it, whatever, you're trying something different. And you can be mad about it all you want, but it doesn't change the fact that these guys are out here struggling just as much as anybody else. And they're one of the bottom end teams for sure. I don't think there's any team out there that's worse than the 51 car on a consistent week-to-week basis. So when you're that bad and you're that slow, you have to try different shit to try to just get anything to work, to try to get any sort of positions, any spots, anything. You're trying anything. And I don't think Cody's very good. I think he's obviously gifted that spot because of, his last name and who he's related to. And if that team was owned by anybody else, he would not be racing in that car. But it's owned by Rick Ware, so therefore Cody gets to be in it. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who, probably shouldn't be in the Cup Series driving a Cup car. It's him. So that is forever going to be a thing. There is forever going to be some bottom end team that's slow every week and doesn't compete. That's how many laps down, just running laps, trying to finish the race, who end up making a mistake late in the race that manipulates the race in a way that changes the outcome. And to try to dissect it and to try to come up with some sort of rule or some sort of idea in a way of trying to avoid it, to me, if you are one of those people, I'm going to make it extremely clear right now. If you are one of the type of people that after seeing what happened to Cody Ware, who obviously only accidentally spun out because of a mistake by either him or his team or his crew chief or whomever, and your reaction to seeing that is to want to implement any sort of rule or something to try to permanently remove that, avoid that, or to penalize somebody for doing that, in my opinion, I want you nowhere near this sport, and I want you gone as a fan. I talked about earlier about having record low ratings. I'd be fine with having a 1.8 million people watching versus 1.9 if that 100,000 people that were gone were those types of fans. Because I know and understand that the types of people who are of that opinion are the very, very, very small minority. And that their fingerprints or their reach as far as actual amount of fans that watch every week is so small. They're the very, very vocal, very minority. I get that. But it doesn't change the fact that because they are the very vocal minority, they're listened to and people take them seriously within the sport. And they take those people as the ones who are the actual fans who actually watch. When the reality is that, in my opinion, most people who are NASCAR fans nowadays aren't on social media because they're 50 and 60-year-old people in the South who aren't on the internet all day and would rather sit and watch cable TV and cable news channels for their entertainment rather than go on YouTube or go on X or go on Instagram or go on TikTok or any sort of social media platform. They're the 50 and up who are getting their entertainment off of cable television still. So their opinions aren't heard because they're not expressing their opinions on social media. So I know and understand that will there ever be a rule or will there ever be something put in place that will punish drivers that do that? No. And I will say this, if it ever does come to be where that rule is actually in place, that ever does become a reality, I said it a few weeks ago, I'll stop watching. I'll just stop watching because that's not NASCAR. That's not the sport I want. That's not anything I want anything to do with. So I hope that never happens. And hey, this time Denny was on the wrong side of it. Next time, he'll probably be on the right side of it. Stuff happens. As far as the race itself, I mean, the race was short because there was no cautions. Everybody besides the stage break cautions, it ran through pretty quick. Like I said, it was dominated by mostly two people. It was either the Kyle Larson show or it was the Denny Hamlin show, depending upon when you were watching. Bell was fast. I felt bad for Bell there at the end. He was running top 5. Maybe could have had a chance at winning the race if something different happened, but got a little bit of contact and broke a toe link, I believe, that just destroyed his car, and he spun on pit road coming to the white and finished a lap down. So he finished 20th, even though he probably should have finished top 5. Surprisingly good run from Riley Herbst. I'll give him credit for that. I did not think that he would be running top 15. He found some speed or something in that 35 car. And his probably soon-to-be replacement, who ran the 67, finished right behind him. So I'm interested to see how Corey Heim does as the season goes on. I know he's got some more cup rides as the season goes. I'll be very interested to see how well he does at these next tracks coming up on the schedule for him. Shout out to Ty Gibbs, even though he did not have a very good run and was struggling with a tight car all day, still finished with a top 10. William Byron rebounded. I don't know if it was last week or the week before that he had that 30th place run. I think it was last week where he was just awful. Ran like 30th. But he rebounded this week and got himself a top 10. Bubba Wallace a bit better this week. Kind of expected him to be good at Vegas. Listen, I know not a ton of people are listening to these podcasts, but y'all need to start paying attention to the names I've been saying as far as, hey, keep an eye on so-and-so for that race or keep an eye on so-and-so for whatever. I've been granted, it's not hard. Like last week I picked Reddick and Larson to keep an eye on. Reddick won the race. Larson led 70 some laps. I picked Gibbs even though he still had even though it was still only a top 10, still a top 10, it still had speed. I said keep an eye on Byron to rebound from Bristol. Yes, it was Bristol. He had himself a top 10. So, I'm not picking schlubs. I've got some names for the Talladega race coming up here this weekend that we're going to get to here in a minute. But like I said, as far as the race weekend, it was an all right race. Some good back and forth. Kansas is pretty good in general. Everybody gets to run multiple different lanes, and 1.5 miles are usually pretty good in these cars. So, like I said, Tyler Reddick gets another victory, though. His 5th. They talked about in the post-race, this is his 5th win through 9 races, which I think is the first person to do that since Dale Earnhardt back in, 1980 something? I don't remember the exact year. But it was the first person since Dale Earnhardt to win the first 5 out of the first 9 races. So, Reddick is on it, man. If he's not winning, he's still finishing top 10 or around top 10, top 5 every week. So that team has found something. And look, you got to, imagine being Bubba Wallace. Same team, same equipment. Usually somewhat, if not as fast as him, somewhat close in speed. And yet you got fucking nothing compared to him as far as wins. He's gotten all the glory every time. And even Bubba here, like I said, he finished top 5. Like these are not bad runs from him. He's still running well. It's just not resulting in wins like his teammate is. I don't know if his teammate will get the win next week, though, at Talladega. Because it's more of a Bubba Wallace thing to be pretty good at super speedways. But we'll see. I guess, we saw earlier this year Tyler Reddick won a super speedway, if you will. Also won the 500. What am I talking about? Yeah, that was a super speedway. But, all right, let's get into the top 10. Get ready to get out of here. Last week's top 10 after Bristol, I had Tyler Reddick number 1. Don't expect that to change, by the way. Ryan Blaney at 2. Ty Gibbs was at 3. Denny Hamlin was 4. Chase Briscoe was 5. Chase Elliott was 6. Christopher Bell was 7. Bubba Wallace was 8. Kyle Larson was 9. And Joey Logano was 10. So we got one new name in the top 10, but mostly everybody else is the same. So, top 10 after Kansas. Number 10, I have to give a nod to Ryan Preece. Ryan Preece has entered the top 10. Look, I maybe could give it to his other teammate in the 6th car and Brad Kay, but this week I'm going to give it to Ryan Preece. He had himself an 11th place finish. If you go back and look, I mean, he has been one of the most consistent guys every week finishing around the same spot. And it's not like, it's consistently 15th or 20th. No, he's consistently right around that top 10 spot every single week. He's had speed. Surprisingly, at tracks that you don't expect him. You expect him to be top 5, top 3, leading laps at Martinsville and Bristol and, the short tracks where his bread and butter usually is. But funny enough, it's been some of these other bigger tracks where he's shown a little bit better speed and been just as good. Something about him being in this 60 car. Look, Preece at Stewart-Haas was a straight bust. He was a bust at Stewart-Haas. But since he's gotten into this 60 car, I don't know if it's an attitude change. I don't know if the equipment is just that much better. I don't know if all of a sudden he found something with RFK that he didn't have before with Stewart-Haas. He has been a lot better, especially this year. So I have to give Preece the nod. He had an 11th place finish last week. Like I said, he's been right around that 10th place area. If it's not, 10th, it's a little bit better or a little bit worse, but it's right around that same area every single week for the last how many weeks. So we're going to give him the nod this week. Ryan Preece at 10, because I got to replace Joey Logano. Logano was fucking terrible this past weekend. Number 9, Bubba Wallace. I know I dropped him down a spot even though he finished top 5, but look, over the last how many weeks, he hasn't been very good. This week, he finally got himself a top 5. Not a lot of stage points, though, from him. Was 9th in stage 1. And what is that? Racing Reference is weird. They don't give you the spot. You got to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th in stage 2. So, I mean, not terrible, but comparatively to some of the other people around him, not as good stage-wise. And again, he kind of seemed like he was more fiddling top 10, outside top 10 at points in the race for Kansas. And like I said, the previous weeks have kind of hurt him a good amount. So, but he's still in the top 10. Hey, you're still 9th, Bubba, so it's not the end of the world. You can live with a 9th for 1 week. Number 8, Christopher Bell. Look, now with him, he was definitely faster than Bubba, and the finish does not do justice to how well he ran. Like I said, up until 2 to go, he was top 3, had a chance at maybe winning if things worked out a little bit differently, and led a bunch of laps, had race-winning speed. So, still a good run for Christopher Bell, even though the finish does not count it. He had some good stage points as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I mean, finished, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th both times in stage 1 and stage 2. So still got some stage points there to kind of make up for the 20th place finish, but still a good run for Bell, even though the finish does not show it. Number 7, Kyle Larson. He is slowly working up this list. I'm not putting him up top 5 yet because he still hasn't blew us away as far as winning a bunch of races yet. I'm still waiting for it. Still hasn't won a race yet this year, which is kind of unlike Kyle at this point, but I'm waiting for that. I'm waiting for him to get that first, and then the floodgates will open. I have a feeling in 2 weeks, because super speedway racing is not Kyle Larson's deal. In 2 weeks, when we go to Texas, that is when I would say maybe Kyle gets his first win of the season. But he's been close. He's had race winning speed. In this race, he led, what did I say, 78 laps? Yeah, 78 laps. Still finished second. Was just, I mean, he was leading on the last lap as well. Could have very well won the race in this one. So he gets to bump up to number 7. Number 6, I still have Chase Elliott ahead of Kyle again because he has a win. And also he's still been just as consistent as Kyle. Maybe a step behind Kyle as far as consistency. But still ran pretty well. He had himself an 8th place finish in this one for Chase. He didn't really have, it seemed like, a lot of the speed comparatively, though, to Kyle. And so it's a consistent thing with him, though, that this year, because William, like as we've seen, Alex doesn't count in my eyes. But William, in an odd way, has really not been nearly as good as he was last year. It's almost like this year he's kind of take this weird small step backwards. And whereas last year it seemed like it was, okay, Kyle and William Byron are kind of 1A and 1B on the Hendrick hierarchy, and Chase was like number 2, and then, Bowman was a distant 3. And this year it almost seems like it is Kyle Larson 1, Chase Elliott 2, and William Byron 3. So I don't know if they've kind of just missed something this year, or if they've been just, like the Bristol thing is, to me, just odd. Him and Joey Logano have both done the same thing. Joey's now done it twice. He did it 2 weeks ago at Darlington, and then he did it this week at Kansas. And then William just did it last week at Bristol, or 2 weeks ago, I should say, at Bristol. Like these weird, like, show up, and I understand there's not a lot of practice, but just show up and in the race just have no speed. So we'll see what happens there, but I have Chase still at 6. Like I said, he still got the win, but it's close. I mean, you want to talk about, 1A and 1B. I'd say it's almost kind of like Chase Elliott's 6A and Larson's more 6B. I mean, they're basically even at this point on my list. The win is the only thing that separates them. Number 5 is Denny Hamlin. I understand that he dominated the race. It is a Denny Hamlin tradition to have a late race lead and blow it. He does this constantly. It is a stigma that has surrounded him his entire career of just choking. And I don't want to say that the Kansas was a choke job, but look, he said it himself. He said it in his podcast, and he said it after the race on the radio. He knew what Kyle Larson was going to do, and yet he still got beat by him. He's like, I knew what he was going to do on the top side, and yet he still allowed Kyle to beat him on it. You can only point the finger so many times, Denny, before it's like, dude, who else are you going to blame? Oh, I didn't get a good enough push. Well, neither really did Kyle either. He just timed the restart just as good and stayed with you at the end. So, and hey, I understand, look, yeah, if the caution never came out, it'd be a different story, and Denny Hamlin would have won the race, and he probably would have moved up my power rankings, but that didn't happen. He didn't win. He choked it away again, and therefore he gets to sit in 5. Right ahead of him, although he hasn't won a race yet, number 4 is Chase Briscoe. Somebody who took advantage of the late race caution, put on 4, and got the best out of what he could off those 4 tires, getting himself to a 3rd place finish. Even though he was not as fast as Hamlin or Larson, still finished just as good as those guys. And this is the one thing I've said about Briscoe over the last how many weeks is finding the finish. He's found the speed. He has the speed, and there's always something that happens, mechanical-wise, mistake-wise, either by his team or by him. Something along those lines has hindered him from finishing better than he really has shown as far as speed. I think they know and understand that, and I think they're finally starting to clean it up. I'm waiting for that first Chase Briscoe win this season. It's going to happen soon. He keeps running finally well at the end and making good decisions as a team as a whole. That 19 is going to find the victory lane here a couple times here within the next couple months. Number 3, I have to drop Ryan Blaney down a spot. Look, you cannot, he's ran probably up until this week the most consistently well out of everybody. As far as raw speed, every week he has been one of the best consistently up until this week. And I have to drop him down one spot for that. He may have qualified 9th, but he was missed something. Him and Logano both missed something. Blaney finished 24th. All speed. It was all speed. They just didn't have it. No mechanical issues, no cautions that he was involved in. They just didn't have the speed. And I mean, you're getting beat by both Legacy Motor Club cars. You're getting beat by the fucking Hayek Motorsports team. You're getting beat by Alex Bowman, who's just getting back 2 weeks in. You're getting beat by Austin Dillon in an RCR car. You're getting beat by Corey Heim, Riley Herbst, who's, always consistently mid to, back of the pack. Getting beat by a lot of these guys that you shouldn't be getting beat by. And not only that, but you've been one of the fastest cars consistently the last how many weeks. They just flat missed it this week. And so I'm going to punish him for it. It wasn't on the pit crew this week. It was on the team as a whole as to why they finished as badly as they did. For that number 2, I have to give it up to Ty Gibbs. I know that he did not have a great finish this week, but better finish than Ryan Blaney did, still with a very tight race car according to him. Finished top 10. It's the Toyota effect. I think part of that, and then part of the fact that maybe that, I've said it how many times, the Gabe Hart JGR stuff, revealing the special treatment for Ty Gibbs, I think has lit a fire under his ass, got him to race a lot better and run a lot better than he has over the last how many years. And he's finally hitting his stride. He won last week at Bristol. And again, even though he had not the fastest car, still salvaged himself a top 10. So what that shows me, though, is the fact that even though he didn't have the fastest car, even though he didn't have, what he wanted, he was still able to find himself a top 10 and still do pretty well. So for that, Ty Gibbs gets up to 2. And, of course, number 1 literally has been number 1. I have now done this. So 9 weeks I've done this list because there was 1 week we skipped because, the Cup Series was off. Every single week, all 9 weeks, Tyler Reddick has been number 1 in my power rankings, and it was close. It was close last week or 2 weeks ago, where I almost knocked him off that top spot because, like I said earlier, Ryan Blaney was consistently starting to, there was a couple weeks there where he was consistently faster than Tyler, and the only thing that was holding Ryan back was his pit crew. Yeah, it's the gap is widened again. Reddick gets his 5th win in 9 races. Not since Dale Earnhardt that's happened, I guess. And Blaney had himself a pretty rough finish this past weekend at Kansas. So, like I said, that gap widens a little bit. So there is my top 10 after Kansas. Tyler Reddick is still number 1. Ty Gibbs is 2, Ryan Blaney 3, Chase Briscoe 4, Denny Hamlin 5, Chase Elliott 6, Kyle Larson 7, Christopher Bell 8, Bubba Wallace is 9, and Ryan Preece, new entry into the top 10, is 10th. Ones to watch for Talladega this weekend. I have to say, a bit different list than what you would previously have heard over the last how many weeks, Bubba Wallace is my number one guy to watch. Toyota has had speed every single week, and it is obvious that they are on a heater right now. Chevy is the only excuse I can give them is that they're still struggling with their new front end. I know Kyle Busch, in one of his interviews, talked about that being one of the reasons why he's struggling is that they have the new front end. I'm not sure if that's a Coop or if that's legitimate. I mean, the front end doesn't really look all that different, but then again, I'm not an engineer and I don't know the aerodynamics of NASCAR cars compared to those guys, so maybe they know better and it is that much of a difference. That being said, Chevy is, although still the second best manufacturer right now, I feel like week to week, it's very close between them and Ford. I mean, it's a neck and neck battle every week as far as who's better and who gets that second place spot. But it is consistent every single week since the drop of the green flag on the season. Toyota has been number one. And Bubba Wallace, give him all the shit you want as far as not being as good of a driver as people hype him up to be. If there's one thing that he can do, he can run well at super speedways. And the fact that we had to Talladega this weekend, Toyota being very fast, Bubba being usually pretty good and getting good finishes at super speedways, I would say keep an eye on Bubba as my number one guy to watch this weekend. Number two is not my underdog, but it is kind of a dark horse. I'm going to say Carson Hocevar. He was right there at the end earlier this season at Daytona. I don't know if he was leading or if he was second place, but he was one of the two. Basically, the two Spire cars were 1 and 2 on the white flag. Getting wrecked going into turn 1 obviously ruined that, but I think Carson, with his aggressiveness, I feel like he is going to be the one to take chances that others won't. Sometimes it'll work, and sometimes it won't. But I have a feeling that he'll be smart enough to make a lot of those other times work. And that third lane is calling Carson Hocevar's name. As far as once they get into a run here, him being aggressive, jumping up into that third lane, trying to make that third lane work, I think we'll see him finish pretty well at Talladega. My next two aren't too surprising when it comes to Talladega. I'm just going to put them in a bundle together. It's really the next three. My third and fourth to watch, and then also my underdog to watch, are all Penske cars. Logano and Blaney are my 3 and 4. Logano is usually always pretty good at super speedways. He also is pretty aggressive as far as getting himself to the front and keeping himself at the front, as well as Blaney is usually pretty good at following suit. And not to mention the fact that he, up until this past weekend, has been one of the fastest cars every week. I don't expect that to change. I expect him to be pretty good at Talladega as well and have speed there. And then obviously my underdog is their teammate, Austin Cindric. I don't like Austin. I don't think he's very good. But the one thing I have to give him credit for is, again, super speedways, he usually finds himself at the front. Whether that is really him or it's, again, him following his Ford teammates and following his Penske teammates, doesn't change the fact that he finds himself at the front at the end of these things a lot. And it is really just a matter of them avoiding the inevitable big one that happens and getting themselves a solid finish. So there is your 5 to watch: Wallace, Hocevar, Logano, Blaney, and my underdog, I'm going to give it to Austin Cindric because, you know, he is kind of the third guy usually in that Penske group. But that is going to do it for me this week on Coop Radio Presents NASCAR. I enjoyed this show. I hope you all did too. If you did, leave a comment down below letting me know what you feel. I hope that everybody really enjoys the Denny Hamlin rant at the start of the show. It keeps people going, watching longer. If you agree with what I had to say about Denny Hamlin, leave a comment down below. If you also disagree and think that Kyle Busch is washed, let me know how you feel. I would love to get a gauge on how people feel in the YouTube comments. But if you did enjoy the podcast, leave a like on this video. It is also, I don't mention it enough, but it's also on Spotify. So if you're not a big YouTube guy and you want to listen to it while you're just driving, or you don't actually want to have it playing on your phone while it's on, you want to just have it on in the background, I do also put these on Spotify as well, which the link for that is in the bio of the YouTube channel. You can find it in my links on the actual YouTube channel. And I should probably start putting it in the description of the videos, but go find it in the bio in my links of the YouTube channel. Go look there. Got to get those Spotify numbers up, baby. Want to get myself a Spotify deal. But again, like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all the other stupid shit that you are told to say. I hope y'all enjoyed this week's episode. Enjoy this weekend's races at Talladega. Talladega should be a fun one. I know some people are kind of down as far as not feeling like the new stage breaks. We'll get to see how they really work this weekend, but I know some people are not really high on the new stage breaks and don't really feel like it's going to make that much of an impact. But look, I'm optimistic. I understand that fuel saving is never going to leave the strategy of the races. So look, the first stage will probably be pretty boring. Just going to go ahead and fair warn you. But maybe not even that second stage, but the third stage should be much better. The ending of the race should be much better, where guys will actually be aggressive and actually try to make moves, because fuel won't matter. So I'm excited for it. I hope y'all enjoy this weekend's races. It should only be maybe ARCA is racing, but I know trucks are still off, and it's just, I believe it's just O'Reilly and Cup. So I'll be back again same time next week, talking more about the outcome of Talladega, and I'll probably talk about Cletus next week. I know that Cletus got approved, or not approved, but he's going to race again in the O'Reilly Series at Nashville. I'll probably talk about that next week. Maybe I'll mention that, but we'll see how the news week goes. Thank you all again for listening. Take it easy.